In this video, you will see a detailed examination of the Kursk operation and Ukraine's offensive in Kursk Oblast in 2024-2025. For over 2 long years, the war had been this brutal, grinding conflict fought only on Ukrainian soil. Then, in the summer of 2024, something impossible happened. In a move that sent absolute shockwaves across the globe, Ukrainian forces launched this daring, massive ground invasion deep inside Russian territory. So the question on everyone's mind was, how on earth did they pull that off? To really understand why Ukraine would take such a monumental risk, we first have to go back and look at the brutal reality of the front lines in the summer of 2024. So after the initial invasion and the big counteroffensives of 2023, the war had pretty much turned into this brutal war of attrition. By the middle of 2024, the fighting in the Donbass had reached absolutely insane levels, with Russia just throwing wave after wave of soldiers and armor to capture key towns like Pokrovsk. It was a literal meat grinder. This relentless pressure was becoming unsustainable. Ukrainian forces in the east were being bled white by these constant attacks. It was crystal clear to the high command in Kyiv that they needed a dramatic, game-changing move to break the stalemate and completely rewrite the rules of the war. Now, this wasn't just some reckless gamble. No, this was a meticulously planned operation with really clear, multi-layered goals. The number one goal? Forced Russia to pull its elite units away from the Donbass. But the plan was also to create a buffer zone for cities like Sumy, to capture Russian POWs for future exchanges, and, of course, to deliver a huge psychological blow right to the Kremlin. Okay, so with those objectives in mind, the stage was set for one of the most audacious military operations of the 21st century. This is the moment Ukraine seized the initiative in the most shocking way you can imagine. On August 6, 2024, under the cover of darkness, the operation kicked off. Spearheaded by elite units like the 82nd Air Assault Brigade, Ukrainian mechanized columns just smashed right through the international border, and just like that, the war had officially and violently spilled into Russia. The tactic they used was a classic breakthrough. Instead of a slow, grinding advance, they focused overwhelming force on specific points to just shatter the front line. They plowed through obstacles. You see these things, these so-called dragon's teeth and thinly manned trenches, with so much speed and ferocity that the defenders were completely overrun before they even knew what was hitting them. And the results? They were simply staggering. In the very first week, Ukrainian forces seized over 1,000 square kilometers of Russian territory. To give you some perspective, that is an area larger than New York City, captured in a blitzkrieg-style attack. A huge part of this early success was the capture of Sudzha. Taking a significant Russian district capital wasn't just a win for logistics, it was a massive symbolic blow. For the first time since World War II, a Russian city was under foreign military control. Just think about that. You see, the Russian border units, mostly made up of poorly trained conscripts and guys who weren't well equipped, were caught completely flat-footed. Their command and control just disintegrated almost instantly, which led to a total collapse of their defensive line. Listen to this leaked communication. Complete chaos. Command has lost control. We are retreating. So what started as a breakthrough? Well, it quickly evolved into something much, much more significant. A deep and stable pocket of Ukrainian-controlled territory inside Russia. In military terms, we call this a salient. Basically, a bulge in the front line that pushes deep into enemy territory. At its deepest point, Ukrainian mobile recon groups pushed an incredible 35 kilometers into Russia. Look, this wasn't just some quick border raid, this was a deep operational penetration that threatened major Russian supply lines and sent absolute shockwaves through the Kremlin. The difference between the two sides was just night and day. On one side, you had Ukraine using modern combined arms tactics, decentralized command, and amazing drone intelligence, which let them adapt and hit weak spots on the fly. And on the other side, a disorganized, unprepared Russian defense, crippled by bad communication and basically no idea what was actually happening. And then they did something truly unprecedented. Ukraine established a formal military administration over the more than 100 Russian towns and villages it now controlled. This solidified their occupation and sent a clear message to the world that this was way more than just a temporary raid. But you know a move like this isn't going to go unanswered, right? The Kremlin, reeling from the public humiliation, began a desperate, furious scramble to pull together forces and launch a counteroffensive to take back its lost territory. And right here, this is where you can see that Ukraine's main goal, well, it worked. Just look at these numbers. Russia was forced to pull tens of thousands of its best troops from critical fronts in the Donbass and Kherson and rush them to Kursk. The pressure on the Eastern Front was immediately relieved. That's a huge win.
But get this, even that wasn't enough. In a move that really showed how desperate Russia's manpower situation had become, by October 2024, something pretty significant and honestly kind of ominous started happening. North Korean expeditionary forces began showing up on the front lines in Kursk, fighting right alongside Russian units.
As Russia poured in more and more reinforcements, the whole nature of the battle changed completely. Yeah, that fast-moving war of maneuver, that was over. The fighting devolved into this brutal, grinding conflict, a hellscape defined by massive glide bomb strikes that leveled entire villages, relentless artillery duels, and World War I-style trench warfare, where you were fighting for every single meter. So, after months of this absolute grind, Ukraine's commanders had to make another really tough, critical decision. The next phase wasn't going to be a retreat or a rout. It was going to be a deliberate, calculated withdrawal designed to save their own forces while inflicting maximum pain on the enemy. By early 2025, the whole strategic picture had shifted. Just by piling in troops, Russia had managed to build up an overwhelming numerical advantage in the area. For the outnumbered Ukrainian defenders, trying to hold that territory indefinitely just wasn't a smart move anymore. But this wasn't some panicked retreat. No way! The Ukrainian forces pulled off a textbook phase withdrawal. They'd hold a line, make the attacking Russian and North Korean forces pay for every inch, and then, with incredible discipline, they would pull back in good order to the next defensive position they had already prepared. And then they'd just do it all over again. The price Russia paid for this counteroffensive was just astronomical. According to Ukrainian sources, the campaign to retake Kursk Oblast cost the Russian and North Korean forces over 77,000 casualties. To put that in perspective, that's more than the total number of American casualties in the entire Vietnam War, suffered in just a few short months. Okay, so now that the active fighting is over, we can really step back and analyze the true legacy of this operation. Was it a brilliant strategic masterstroke that changed the course of the war, or was it a costly gamble with limited long-term gains? So, this all leads to the big question. Even though they eventually withdrew, can the Kursk operation be considered a strategic success for Ukraine? Well, if you look at a kind of scorecard like this, the answer isn't so simple. On one hand, Ukraine absolutely nailed its primary goals. It diverted huge Russian reserves, which relieved the pressure on the Donbass and probably saved thousands of Ukrainian lives. They inflicted massive casualties, and they captured over 1,000 prisoners, a valuable bargaining chip. And psychologically, it was a massive win, shattering the myth of Russian invincibility. But these achievements came at a cost. The operation took a ton of resources, Ukrainian forces took their own casualties, and in the end, they couldn't hold the territory. If we're talking pure military tactics, though, this operation was a masterclass in modern warfare. It proved once again how important surprise and mobility are, but it also showed the absolutely critical role of 21st century tech. The way they integrated drones for recon and for strikes was a total game changer, allowing a smaller, more agile force to outwit and outmaneuver a much larger, slower enemy. When all is said and done, the 2024 Kursk operation is going to go down in the history books as a bold and brilliant new chapter. It was the moment Ukraine decisively showed it could seize the strategic initiative, dictate the pace of the war, and prove to the world and to Russia that no part of the aggressor's territory was safe. It was just an act of incredible audacity, tactical brilliance, and unwavering courage.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave your comments below.